Now, the first and second phone call, how does that work? Okay, go to the page, coincidentally enough, that says first phone call. Now, I don't have a page that says second phone call. But shockingly enough, the second call is very similar to the first call. Not exact, but similar. So let's go through it. Now, when you call the first time, you don't want to make it obvious that you're calling because of the referrals. But that really is the only reason you're calling. Now, I was going to make a change on here because there is something different that I do than is on here. When I call between the first and second appointment, I ask about car insurance, if they've called the number for the car insurance. The reason I didn't put it on here is because you got to be licensed in Pennsylvania. Raise your hands if you're licensed. All right, that's wonderful. Again, that's a big advantage. If you're licensed, then you can substitute the first thing that I'm going to cover with you for following up on the car insurance. But you want to call to follow up on something that they feel is to their benefit. Because there's something called the law of reciprocity. You're doing something for them, they want to reciprocate, right? So the call could go something like this. Hi, Mary, this is Howard Lashner. How are you? They say, great. Say, wonderful. Hey, listen, I wanted to let you know I've put considerable amount of time into your financial needs analysis. Everything is coming along great. I think you'll be very favorably impressed. I just have one quick question. Do you get paid biweekly or semi-monthly? Now, by the way, do I care? No. No. And even if they told me, then I must have forgotten. Okay? But I said that solely because I want to engage them in a conversation. As soon as they tell me, I say to them, great, thanks, fine. Hey, by the way, so it doesn't sound like a track when it is, right? How are you coming along with those 7 to 10 pre-called introductions? Now, from there, you will get a number of different answers. The most popular of which, Danny, is? Wait, Danny? I got 1 or 2. Okay, I've got 1 or 2 now. Does that mean they have 1 or 2? No, because that means they could have been thinking about 1 or 2 people. Now, you need to verify. So let's say that Danny says to me, yeah, I've got 1 or 2. Well, Danny, if you don't mind me asking, which is it? 1 or 2? I mean, it's one thing if you said I got 27 or 28. But 1 or 2 there really shouldn't be a misunderstanding about that. Right? I talked to somebody yesterday. I was asking about how many sales were turned in on his team. And he goes, we're still trying to calculate it. I said, what do you mean you're still trying to calculate it? And he goes, well, I'm not really sure. I said, well, let's take a moment. Let's think it through. He goes, 1 or 2. I said, I really want you to focus now. How many is it? And he goes, 1. I go, what the hell is the calculation for? It's 1. So, Danny says to me 1 or 2. So I would say, now by the way, if he says 3 or 4, it doesn't matter. If he says a few, a bunch, it doesn't matter. I want specifics. Specificity is the key here. If you're not specific, you will always get less than what you think. Because whatever the client thinks and what you think are miles apart. Okay? Miles apart. Just like when a guy wants to date a girl and he says to the girl, it's just coffee. In the girl's mind, it's coffee. In the guy's mind, it's something very different, isn't it? All right? So you got to understand, you got to make sure this is the same thing. You got to be on the same, you got to know exactly what they're saying. So he says 1 or 2. He says 1 or 2. Then I'll say to him, if you don't mind me asking, Danny, which is it, 1 or 2? And he'll say to me, 1. Now, I'm not done yet. Tell me, is this a person you personally spoke to and got permission for me to talk to? And typically, Danny will say, no. So in other words, you're at 0. That's the real answer. The real answer is 0. They will give you a lot of different answers because they don't want to say 0, but the real answer is 0. No, but I got their name on a list. Good for you. I got the white pages. I got you beat. Okay? If it's a name and number, you're not going to beat me in that game. Are these people that you personally spoke to? So you need to verify. Never hang up the phone. Now, regardless of what his answer is, assuming he doesn't say, I have all 7 or 8 or 10 already done, which in all the years I've done this, that's never happened to me even once. I've never once called and had somebody say 2 or 3 days later, hey, it's all done. Now, in terms of timing also, let's say I see somebody on a Thursday. I typically tend to try to schedule them back the following Thursday. It gives enough time for the SMART and all that other stuff to be done, and it gives them enough time to get the pre-called introductions. I need to make 2 calls between the first and second appointment. If my first appointment is on a Thursday, when should my first follow-up call be? Saturday or Sunday. Sunday's the latest. Okay? Now, typically, 2 or 3 days later, they haven't done anything. So guess what happens when they hang up the phone? They go, oh, crap. I only got 5 days left or 4 days left. I got to get on this thing. Then what happens? They make a call, 2 calls, 3 calls. They get un poquito for our Spanish-speaking friends in the audience. Okay? They get a little done. Very, very little done. Then you call back 2 days later. Or 3 days. So it should be 2 or 3 days the first time, or 2 or 3 the exact opposite, okay? Because I got to make sure I have at least 2 days between the second call and the appointment. So if I'm going back to see you on a Thursday, my second call has to be Tuesday or Monday at the latest. Now, why is that? Because I got to give you enough time to make up the rest of the referrals. I can't call them Thursday morning and say, how you doing? That's not going to work. And I want to be respectful to them and still firm and fair to myself. So here would be an example of a call. And Dan, if you can just speak up loud. In fact, why don't you stand up? And I want you to be a client. You and I have not rehearsed this, true? All right. I want you to just be a typical example of a client that you've called in the past, and I'll play the Primerica rep, okay? The part of the Primerica rep is going to be played by Howard Lashner. So I call up and I say, hey, by the way, how are you, Danny, by the way, how are you coming along in those 7 to 10 pre-called introductions? Okay. If you don't mind me asking, which is it, 1 or 2? Well, 1. 1? Okay. Okay, great. And that's somebody you said you personally spoke to, and he gave you permission for me to call?
Well, we were talking about, you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Sort of kind of what?
Well, he said it was okay for you to call.
Okay, are you sure about that? Because I want you to know there's something called the do not call list. And I could actually get in a lot of trouble if I ever called somebody, and I know you wouldn't want that to happen, but I could get in a lot of trouble if I called somebody that was on this list without their permission. So are you positive that he gave permission for me to call?
Yeah, he said it was okay to call.
Okay, are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you see each time, right? Okay, all right, very good. All right, well, you have 1 under your belt right now. Of course, you know the biggest piece of my compensation, Danny, and what really allows me to do what I do is those 7 to 10 pre-called introductions. Now, we're going to be seeing each other about 5 days from now. And I mentioned to you I put a lot of time into working on your financial analysis. Again, I think it's really coming along great. I think you're really going to be favorably pleased with it. But on my end, what allows me to do that is those 7 to 10 pre-called introductions. Are you sure you're going to be able to get them done by next Thursday, or should we just push the appointment back a little bit? Are you positive? Because I don't want you to feel pressure. I mean, obviously, I have to have those 7 to 10 because otherwise I'd be out of business. But if you're not positive, I have no problem. If you want to push it back a little bit, we absolutely could. Okay, now let's stop right there. Typically, at that point, they still say, no, we can do it. So I just want to, I'll take over it. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's okay. Thank you. So typically, they say, no, that's okay. We can definitely do it. They hang up the phone. They go, crap, I need 6 more. Right? And sometimes if they say, you know, I got to get, if they express any type of concern, sometimes I'll say to them, well, it's 6, 3 for you, 3 for your wife to get to the 7. Do you think, do you think that, 5 days is enough time for you to get 3 more for you and 3 more for your wife? So you reduce it to the ridiculous, okay? So it doesn't feel so overwhelming. Now we hang up the phone. Danny says, okay, I got to get on the stick. 2 days later, I call back. Hey, Danny, how you doing? I'm going to ask another innocuous question. I'm going to again say things are coming along great. I've put a lot of time into your financial needs analysis, right, Jason? And, and I think things are coming along well and whatnot. Now, why do I always preface, prior to asking for the referrals, the fact that I've put a lot of time into this? The law of reciprocity. I do something for you, you feel like you should do something for me. That's exactly right. So now I say to him, how are you coming along? And Danny turns around and says, yeah, we got a few more. how much is a few? I don't mean Webster's dictionary says 3. I mean, how much is a few in Danny's mind? Well, the answer is who knows unless you ask. So never say, oh, okay, he had 1 before, now he has 3 more, he must be at 4. It doesn't mean that. So you go through the same process again. Well, if you don't mind me asking, how many is a few? He says 3. Okay, great. Is that 3 additional, including the 1 before, so now you're at 4, or is it 3? I want to know. So he says, I'm at 4. Okay, Danny, great. You're halfway there. I'm looking forward to seeing you a couple days from now. But are you sure that you're going to be able to get up to the 7 to 10 by Thursday, or would you like to push it back? Because honestly, Danny, now listen to the wording. Honestly, Danny, I would have no problem at all if we need to make an adjustment to the time just so you don't have to feel any pressure. Now, by the way, I am creating pressure. Okay? I just want him to like me through this process. So I will not bend on the referrals. But I want him to understand that I'm sensitive to his plight that he's found himself in. So, hey, listen, honestly, I don't want you to feel any pressure, so I have no problem at all if you want to make an adjustment to the time, unless you're absolutely positive that you can have that done by Thursday. Normally, they say, no, I'll get it done. And guess what happens when you walk through the door? Half the time it's done, half the time it isn't. But when you walk in, there's normally 5 or more. Now, here's an interesting thing that we found out about these statistics. At 5 or more, your referral base will grow. If you compromise and take less than 5, you will shrink and go down to 0. At 5 or more, it tends to grow. I want 7 to 10 every single time. But I know every now and then it's not going to happen. I'm going to talk to, my last conversation with Danny is he was at 4. 2 days later, I show up, and he only has 5 or 6. But he won't stop at 4. You all got me? It's just, again, it's human nature. We've had so many conversations about it. I've put in so much time into his financial needs analysis that he would feel terrible for me to do all that work and for him to lie to me and not do it. You all understand that? Okay, now, I saw him on a Thursday. I called him on a Sunday the first time. How much work on his financial needs analysis have I done up at this point? Nothing. Why? Because I'm not getting burned. Every now and then, you never go back to see somebody. Rare, but every now and then it happens. Rare. It really ticked me off the first time that happened to me, and I put hours coming in, all this time, and then the person was just like, well, I can't get any, and well, let's just forget it. Well, I just got screwed out of 6 hours of work or 5 hours of work or something like that. So now I'll go through hey, I put a lot of time in it, it's coming along great and whatever, and I have. In my head, I've worked out all the details of your financial needs analysis. But I'm not actually going to sit down and do it until I know that you're going to come up on your side. Because the one thing that we know in this relationship is I will show up to your door at the right day, at the right time, with my work done. Would you all agree with that? Regardless of when I start, it will be done. The debate is whether or not they'll have the referrals waiting for me. So I want them to get started on it. We have to follow up on it. That's a really important piece if you could all understand that. Okay. Let's see. We have another script in there that talks about if you get an answering machine. Hey, guess what? 70% of the time you're going to get voicemail. Okay, when you get voicemail, the first call is very simple, but you're asking them to return your call and to give you the details. Now, by the way, having said that, and there's nothing more we're going to talk about on there, having said that, that's an important reason. On the F&A input sheet, and I know there's different F&A input sheets that people use, but the one thing that universally should be in all F&A input sheets is their home phone, their work phone, and their cell phone. And what I would tell you is ask both the husband and wife for 3 phone numbers. Don't just say, oh, I got a home phone number. Because guess what? You'll never reach them. If you have 6 phone numbers, trust me, you can get one of them on the phone at almost any time. People don't screen work calls. When the work phone rings, they answer the phone, don't they? So it's simple to get people during the day if you have a work number. So you'll find that the percentage of success will rise dramatically if you're able to talk to them. And if you're not able to reach a person and you keep leaving a message on the answer machine, then the last message should be this. hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, it's Tuesday evening. We have an appointment scheduled for Thursday. I put a lot of time into your financial needs analysis, blah, blah. I think you'll be really pleased with it, but I haven't heard back from you yet. And so unless I hear back from you today, I have no other option than just to assume that we're going to need to reschedule this. I don't know if there's been an emergency or whatever, but unless I get some confirmation that everything's okay, I'm going to just assume that there's been some type of problem. And then normally, suddenly out of the blue, boom, you get a phone call. No, everything's fine. We've just been really busy. Well, good. I want a live conversation that says you have these referrals. Or at least something on the answering machine that's really specific, which, by the way, hasn't happened to me yet in all the times I've done this. So I want a live conversation to know that I'm not going to get burned on that. Does that make sense to you? Okay. That's it in terms of what I have here. I'm going to discuss a couple more things with you. And then I'll take questions, okay? So let's talk for a second in terms of leverage, okay? Let's talk about leverage with the pre-called introductions. A while ago, this is some years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that, Maria and I put an ad in a newspaper because we wanted to hire a new assistant in the office. And so we gave a fax number and we got, a bunch of resumes in and we hired somebody and we didn't even call all the resumes because we found the person. Well, anyway, I don't know if it was 4 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. Maria said, she goes, I held on to those resumes all this time. She said, do you want to call these people to come down to the opportunity meeting? And I said, I'm just really packed. I just don't have it to call somebody out of the blue from a resume, whatever. And she goes, I'll do it. So Maria calls up and she talks to this one person. Woman says, sure, I'll come take a look. So she comes, takes a look at the business, joins the business. She's since quit. And we go on a training appointment with her. And we go to see her nephew. We do the appointment with the nephew. We go through the pre-called introductions. He says, yes, I'll give you your 7 to 10. We come back. We do business, life, securities, the whole thing. Gives us the 7 to 10. One of the 7 to 10. By the way, once they give you the referrals on the second visit, I always interview them about each person. So here's an example. In fact, if you can remind me, I want to explain to everybody how to get good referrals. Okay, just remind me that. So I always interview people about the referrals they give me. They give me a sheet. It's got 8 names on it. And I'll go through it and say, great. If you wouldn't mind, let's just take a moment. If you can just give me a little information. Bill and Mary. Who called Bill and Mary? And John goes, I did. I put John right next to there. Okay, great. Who did you talk to? I talked to Bill. I circled Bill. Is there something specific that Bill said he was interested in? Sometimes they go, yeah, Bill just hit the lottery for $1 million. Good. I'll put a little star. He's my first call. Okay? So you can prioritize because just like Danny said, eventually there's too many people for you to call. It just is. It's just the way that it's going to work. So you're going to really start to cherry pick your phone calls. Now, if every person answered the phone the first time, it would be different. But because they don't, it takes a number of calls to reach people in today's world. You just run out of time. But the nice thing is you don't run out of business. So you go through that with everybody, and you make sure that you know exactly who it is. Well, I went through that, and I said, who's this? And the guy said, oh, this is my best friend. I said, great. So I put a little asterisk. This obviously somebody's got influence with. Called up the best friend, scheduled an appointment, showed up at the best friend's house. The wife is there, husband isn't there. So we wait for a little bit. And the appointment was supposed to be at 5, and they were in a rushed schedule, and at 6 o'clock, they had to get out of the house and the whole thing. And the husband walks in. Instead of at 5, the husband walks out. I don't remember, it was 20 after 5 or 5:30 or whatever it was. But it was a really rushed type of thing. And he looks at me like, I don't even remember that you were supposed to be coming here. And so we go through everything and whatnot. And fortunately, we had spoke on the phone, and so, I had the credibility and whatnot. And we go through everything very briefly. Collect the information, get the commitment for the 7 to 10 pre-called introductions. Verify them, come back on the second visit, get the 7 to 10 pre-called introductions. I had invited him out to the office because he didn't like what he did on a full-time basis, worked at AMCO. So I invited him out to the office. He didn't show up to the office. But I did get the pre-called introductions. Called him back, said, hey, I've got these appointments that I've scheduled with these pre-called introductions. I'm going to see these people. If you were in the business, you could come with me. Well, in the meantime, I saw a neighbor, did business, hired the neighbor and whatnot, and then saw a bunch of other people. And this was over the course of about 10 days or 14 days. He came down to the office. The original person comes down to the office. I hire him. Okay, he's in the audience right now. Jason, why don't you stand up? Okay, now Jason's a division. You don't know what you're clapping for yet. Jason's a division in our business, okay? Jason, in March, how many people did your base shop hire? 12 people. In April, how many did they hire? 13. In May, how many did they hire? 13. This month, where are you at? Where are you going to end up at? 15. Now, I want you to understand, that's a substantial part of our 26 recruits a month. Would you all agree with that? Half of the recruiting over the last 120 days is because of that dude and their incredible team. Jason Dunkerley, although I like to call him Jason Funkerley, right? And so you can give him a round of applause. But the way that we met Jason was through a referral, a client referral, sitting down in his home. And when we first spoke to him, he wasn't interested. I mean, he said he was interested, but he wasn't interested, if you know what I mean. He didn't show up. There's a lot of people you talk to that express some form of interest, but they're just too busy to get around to do it. But it was the referrals that gave the leverage. Now, here's a mistake that a lot of people make in the recruiting process with referrals. They talk to a client on the first visit. They invite the client to the office. Nothing wrong with that. They get so excited about hiring the client, they go, there's no reason to get referrals. I'm going to hire them in the business. Then they don't hire them, and they have no referrals. Now, if they had gotten the referrals, you can always throw them away and just use a favor appointment if you wanted to. I'm not saying you have to. But there's no negative to having the referrals. But there's a major positive. And the major positive is in the recruiting process, if procrastination steps in, you now have leverage to create urgency. Hey, listen, I just scheduled 5 appointments. Now, here's another thing. It's simpler to close business when you do pre-called introductions. Can anybody tell me why? Credibility. And now psychologically, what's happened between the first appointment and second appointment? What has the client been doing? They've been calling who? Friends and family. Telling them what? How great you are. Thank you. Who's saying that? I keep hearing a voice, but I don't know where it's coming from. Is it you? Thank you. I keep looking. Everybody else's face is blank, but I keep hearing a voice. So the ventriloquist is right. They've been talking to friends and family, bragging about you. When you go in on the second appointment, they've been saying to people, oh, you got to see this guy, you got to see this gal, oh, they're incredible, oh, you got to talk to them. Yeah, no, just talk to them for 5 minutes. No, you're going to love them. It's really wonderful. It's really great. When you walk in, they've sold themselves. It's the same concept that Bob taught us years ago about the reason that you get the referrals before you close the sales, because every time they give you a name, they're saying, yes, I'm buying, yes, I'm buying, yes, I'm buying, yes, I'm buying, yes, I'm buying. You get the referrals first. The sale is just an add-on. It's the simplest thing. Bob always told us that when you train a new person, there's 4 things you want to accomplish, and the most important thing is to build their confidence. The second thing is to recruit the person. Third is to get referrals. Fourth is the business. The business is the least important piece, although you should do tons of business, as you've seen with Danny and with Dave. That shouldn't be an issue if you're doing it right, so it really positions you powerfully with that. What was my thing I wanted to do? I know, Elliot, but what was it that I wanted to do? How to get good referrals. Okay. On the first appointment, and Danny, you and I talked about this. On the first appointment, you want to be interviewing people very casually about who they know that you should talk to. So what's an example of that? Do you know the old expression, walk and chew gum? Right? When you're driving, you can talk to somebody but still be watching the road. Right? Or singing with music and still watching the road or whatever. When you're doing an appointment with a client, you should be doing the appointment and another part of your brain is going, who do I want to talk to in their market? So when the person says, I just inherited $250,000, instantly it becomes, how many brothers and sisters do you have? Okay? Person says to me, I go, well, tell me about your job. What do you do? Oh, I work in a small office. Really? How small? Oh, it's about 10 people. How long have you worked there? 11 years. You must know everybody in that office. Tell me about it. Who owns the business? Oh, are they nice? Do you like them? Do you get along well with them? Good. Because at the end, when I'm leaving, when I go through fill out the pre-called introductions, I'm going to tell them who I want them to talk to. Now, I'm not going to give them 20 names, but I will give them 1, 2, or 3 from our previous hour conversation. I'll say to them, here's an example. one of the questions I like to ask people on the first visit is, tell me, do you ever see a time when you're going to be financially responsible for either sets of your parents? What answer do I want them to say? No, I want them to say no. It means their parents are broke if they say yes. Okay? They say, oh, no, my parents are fine. Really? That must be nice. Tell me, what's your father do? What's your mother do? Oh, they just retired 2 years ago from such and such a place. Wonderful. I log it in my head. I want to see those parents. And at the end of the appointment, this is what I say to them. When I go through the 7 to 10 married homeowners, I'll say this. I'll say, by the way, one of the people that I'd love to have a chance to talk to on the phone, Barry, is your parents. I love the way that you describe them. Tell me, you have enough credit. Now get this wording down. Tell me, you have enough credibility that if you asked your father or mother to take a quick 5-minute call from me, they would, don't you? Who's going to say, oh, no, my parents don't respect me at all? Never. So it's a simple way. Now when you go back, they introduce you to their parents. I call it bouncing from generation. See, if I see a 60-year-old, I can get their 35-year-old son or daughter. If I see a 35-year-old, I should get the 60 or 65-year-old father or mother, right? You bounce between generations. If you bounce between generations, you will make a lot more money. The reason that people don't do a lot of securities is because they stay in one generation. And that's the 30 to 35-year-old generation. So they're dealing with the $100 a month investments. But when you learn to bounce, now by the way, in that market you do a lot in smart, as Danny just showed you. But when you learn to bounce, you get both. You get the smart for the younger and typically the investment for the older. A 60-year-old who is broke can have $100,000 saved for retirement. And they literally are broke. If they retire with $100,000, they're hurting. But they got $100,000. A 25-year-old who's got $3,000 thinks they're rich. Okay? Give me the broke 60-year-old instead of the, you follow what I'm saying, okay? So I say that to you because you want to always have an antenna up saying, who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to talk to? You know, you ask them, how long have you lived here? Oh, we've lived here for 15 years. Let's say they have, kids. Say, oh, that's great. Is it a close neighborhood? Your kids have a lot of friends in the neighborhood? Yeah, great. How are the parents? Everybody treat everybody nicely? Is it a close neighborhood? Wonderful. If I like the neighborhood I'm standing in, that's where I want my referrals. Do you follow me? That's where I'll say to them, hey, I love, the area you live in. I'd love to work around here. Tell me, you have enough credibility that if you talk to 3-4 of your neighbors and ask them to take a quick call, they would, don't you? Great. That'd be a great place for us to start then. So you give them direction. Give them direction. How about if you're in a bad market? You're in a bad area. And you said, look, I got to start somewhere, so I'm here. So you're standing here, but you don't want to work here. You want to work there. So here's an example. Let's say that I find myself working an hour from where I live. I live in Doylestown. I'd like to work somewhere close to my home. Then this is what I'll say to somebody. I'll say to them, by the way, when you're talking to those 7 to 10 people, if there's anybody that you know that's out in the Doylestown area, I'd sure love a chance to talk to them because that's an area that I've really targeted for expansion. And all of a sudden they'll go, I know somebody out in Doylestown. Boom, now I can start to move in that direction. If you have another area that you want to open up because you say, oh, that's my dream area and I want to move there one day and open an office, you can just ask. Just ask. Just be specific in what you want the client to do and then follow up. Now, it's got more moving pieces than in the past, but it's smoother in that you don't get stood up. They're happy when you walk through the door. The stuff is waiting for you. Everything will run smooth if you just think about it like a song. It's sung the same way every time, the same notes, the same thing. I do everything in the same order every time, and therefore the results are really predictable. Okay, now we have time for questions. You had your first question. I'll repeat the question so everybody can hear it. You mean if a person says they're interested, that their concern is debt, do I still talk about savings or retirement? Do I still talk about investments, I should say, or life insurance? Absolutely, because I want to see if I want to see them. Right? I mean, a person could say to me, I live in an apartment, so there's no refinancing going on there, right? I live in an apartment, debt's really killing me. Well, I'm not going to see you unless I know the rest of the story, right? Not only that, it still gives you more leverage. Okay? Okay. Yes?
Did you ask specifically for the husband and wife to be there, like when you're scheduling the appointment?
Yes, thank you for saying that. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that I ask, are you married? You absolutely want husband and wife to be there. I can't imagine a market in our world where you would meet with just one of them. I know that if you were working with multimillionaires, there's times that you might say, oh, I'm going to meet the person at their place of business. That's not our world. Our world is husband and wives make joint decisions together, and you have to have both of them together. Okay. Yes? You should always, you're going to get a lot of answering machines. You should always leave a message on an answering machine because in today's world of caller ID, they know you called. So if you call and you hang up and then call and hang up and call and hang up, they go, I got a stalker. Who's this guy who keeps calling? So you got to leave, plus the company tells us legally we have to. In addition to that, don't block your phone number. First of all, less people answer a blocked call because they picture it a toll-free number from some call center soliciting something. So don't block your numbers. It's not legal. The company doesn't want us to do it. It's going to be ineffective for you. So just call the person and leave a message. It doesn't matter what you say. I will tell you what I say. And this is what I say. I say, hi, this is Howard Lashner. I'm calling, for, Bill and Mary Jones. Your friend Susan had asked me to give you a call. I'm sure at this point she mentioned, my name to you. Please return my call at such and such, such and such a number. Now, will they return the call? 1 out of 10 times, 1 out of 5 times. Most times they don't. So guess what happens when I call a second time? I leave the exact same message. If I called the third time, which, by the way, I rarely do because I have so many referrals, it just doesn't matter to me. But if I called the third time, I'd leave the same message. If I called 10th time, I'd leave the same message. Don't get annoyed. Don't leave a message that goes, now listen, this is the 7th time I've called you. If you don't want to talk to me, just leave me a frickin' message and let me know. You can't do that. You got to be really, I'm just telling you, don't let people see you sweat. So you got to be really nice to people. Now, if I called and I wanted to talk to the person, but I can't get them, here's what I do after 2 calls. You call the original client back. And you call the client back and you say, hi, Bill, Howard Lashner. Hey, listen, and by the way, this is something I learned from Bob a billion years ago back in 1985. You give your clients updates and feedback, and they want to give you more referrals, and they help you when you run into some challenges. So you call back the client, and you say to the client, Bill, Mary, I just want to let you know how things were going. I appreciate so much you introducing me, to some of your friends. I already had an opportunity, to talk with John and Mary, and boy, I can tell you, they think the world of you. They were so happy, for us, you introducing us, and I scheduled to see them, and then, Fred and, Nikki, we scheduled to see them, and that went great. But I was calling to ask a favor if I could. I haven't been able to reach, Mary and Bill on the phone yet. I left a couple messages, so I don't know, maybe it's just I'm calling at the wrong time or if things are crazy for them. If you could do me a favor, if you could reach them in the next 24 hours, in the next day or so, and just get from them a daytime number where I'd be able to reach them, preferably not a cell phone number, maybe a work number, where I could talk to them for 30 seconds and then just schedule something, a time that I could talk to them on the phone. That would be helpful. Could you help me out that way? Now, why did I say preferably not a cell phone number? Because nobody answers cell phones nowadays because there's voicemail. So people go like this. Ring, 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 ring. I'll answer that later. Work numbers, they don't. Work numbers, you answer the phone. So I know if you give me a cell phone number, I'm still going to get stuck in leaving those messages. A work number is different. So always ask for that. Okay, wait, one over there, and then we'll go to this side. Yes? You're talking on the second visit? Yes. Okay, perfect. Second visit, you walk through the door. Preliminary pleasantries, little small talk, sit down, take out the financial needs analysis, say to the person, hey, I've been looking forward to getting together with you, put a lot of time into this, I think you're really going to like it. You put it down and you say, by the way, before we get into this, can I see the pre-called introduction sheet where you filled out the names? Now, normally it's sitting on the table because they're proud, okay, because it's been on their mind for a while. But sometimes it isn't, and sometimes they filled it in on a little back of a match box cover. So it's weird the way sometimes they write stuff down. But when they have it, then this is what you say to the person. You go, can I see that real quick for a second? They give it to you. Let's say this is it. Now, husband and wife are here. I'm here. Okay? They hand it to me, and this is what we do. We look at it real quickly, and we go, okay, great. And then I put it to my left. I don't give it back to them. And I say to them, great, we'll just cover that at the end, okay? I'm excited to talk about your financial needs analysis. and then we go through the financial needs analysis. Now, why do we do it that way? One is every now and then somebody would tell me, oh, I just forgot to ask for the referrals. So right before we get started, remember, I'm not going through the F&A until I see this. I put it to my left so they can't accidentally mix it up with papers. Also, I put it to my left so that when I'm done, I remember this is the last thing I'm supposed to cover. That's when I get the specifics. Who did you call? What did they say? Is there something specific they're interested in? And so forth and so on. Make sense? Okay. Next question over here. Yes. No, I wouldn't go through the whole pre-called introduction. I mean, I wouldn't go through the whole interview script because first, you already have a sense of their financial system, so their setup. Second, they're an existing client. So if you've already done a financial needs analysis for them, you can't say to them, you can't suddenly change the rules and say, well, if you don't do this, then I won't do that. That isn't, they're a client, they deserve respect, they deserve to be treated well. If they need to see you about something, we should be helping them. So instead what I would say is I would just position it a little differently if they're a client, which is, hey, can you help me out? I'm asking all of my best clients to X, Y, and Z. If you're saying to yourself, well, I'm newer, I don't have a lot of that or whatever, then it's the same thing. It's kind of which came first, the chicken or the egg. The next appointment that you have that you'd be doing during the appointment, mention to them, hey, by the way, I think I failed to mention to you how we get compensated. Let me go through how our pay works. And then you go through, they're thinking about it anyway, and then you go through it. Are you comfortable with that process? And then from that point forward, you can jump in, okay? Yes? The question is if a person says to you, when you say to them, what's your greatest interest or greatest area of concern or interest, if they say, I just have a little bit of money and I need to know what to do with it, what do you do at that point? The answer is you follow the outline. And you still go through everything because a little bit of money doesn't mean anything to me. A little bit of money could be $5, a little bit of money could be $50,000. I have clients, one is the superintendent of some school districts in New York, and the wife is a principal. So it's like this power couple. And between the two of them, because they're in New York, they probably make $350,000, $400,000. When they talk about a little bit of money, it's very different than the average client. So they'll say things like, yeah, we got pensions, it's a little bit of money. Well, how much? Well, between the two of us, our pensions are about $225,000 a year. Well, for most people, that's rich. So you got to ask, no matter what they tell you, ask. Never just jump right to the end and schedule the appointment. Okay, yes? Call back existing clients. The real answer to that is the beginning is always awkward. It's like learning to dance if you haven't danced. You go, well, where do you start? Well, you got to get through the awkward stage. It's just the way it is. You want to learn how to swim? If you've never swum, guess what? You're going to be awkward. I bowled for the first time last week in 20 years. And my son decided that every day he wanted to go bowling. So 5 days, so much so I actually bought a pair of bowling shoes. It was ridiculous. It was just bothering me to pay $4 every time to rent them. But when we were bowling, Maria was laughing, and I said to Maria, I know why you're laughing. I said, I am the most awkward-looking bowler that there is. Every time I go to bowl, I get to the line, and I go like this because I don't want to cross the thing. Well, by the 5th day, I actually looked a little better. I had to get past the awkward stage. So the answer, if you say, where do I begin? The answer is engage people in a conversation enough that somewhere along the line you're going to be able to say to people, hey, by the way, did I mention to you what a financial needs analysis is? Or, hey, did I mention to you how I get compensated? Or, hey, did I mention to you that I'm expanding my business and I could use your help? I just need two pre-called introductions, or can you help me out this way? I can't say to you that there's one specific way. What I can tell you is to get started, it's quantity, not quality. You just have to ask a bunch of people. If you ask 10 or 20 people to help you and to give you 2 pre-called introductions, I'm expanding my business, I need my help. Trust me, and if you follow up on them, 7 days later, you'll have a place to start. Okay? Yes?
If you go there and they say that they have the 7 for you, but they don't have 7 in front of you when you get there.
Yes.
What do you do?
Well, I ask for them before I get started. I show the financial needs analysis. Remember? That's what I show. And I say, hey, before we cover this, can I see the pre-called introduction sheet that you have filled out? Well, then I would look down, knowing that there's an issue, because they told me 5, and I would say to them, I'm a little confused. When we spoke a few days ago, I know that you had mentioned that you had 5 at that point you were working. There's only 3 listed on here. What happened? Now, the wife might say, oh, I haven't put my 2 on there or my 3, or they may have just lied to me. At that point, I'm not going to make a stink out of it. Okay, I'm not going to say to the person, well, that's it, screw you, I'm out of here. Okay? As much as I want to say that, I'm not going to. Okay? So, I mean, at that point, well, you just say, literally, this is what I would say to the person. I think that's happened to me once, maybe, or twice. Literally, this is what I would say to the person. I'd look at the sheet. I would ask them. They would tell me. I'd say, okay, we'll handle that on the back end after we're done, but I think you're really going to like the pre-called introduction, or the exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I show them their debt summary, but not the debt solution. Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You can find, in fact, Danny, when you and I first spoke, Danny had referral letters that he had already mailed out. And Danny, if I remember correctly, you said that when you called, you just adjusted what you said. Instead of just saying, hey, did you get the letter that so-and-so, whatever, you just jumped right into and started the script. So absolutely, you want to start the transition into the pre-called introduction process as soon as you possibly can in your business. Let me give you a quick example. Let's say that I spoke to somebody about the business, and the person says, "Great business isn't for me. What do you do?" And we start to talk, and they say, "Well, you should really see my daughter. Boy, her and her husband, they could really use your help." So I say, "Great. Would you mind giving her a quick call for 5 minutes? Just make sure that I have permission to give her a call and whatever." They call me. I've never done a financial needs analysis for the first person, but when I call the daughter, I'm going to say, "What did your mother tell you about what I do?" And I'm going to follow right through the script. Yes. He never called them. Got it. Yeah. No, I wouldn't, because I wouldn't call those people. Because there's a do not call list. And probably 80% of America's on the do not call list now. So I would call the client back and say, "Hey, remember these people that you wanted me to call? Before I call them, I'd like you to do me a favor. I want you to give them a quick call and get permission." No, I understand that. And you certainly wouldn't want me to get in trouble because there's something called the do not call list. And believe it or not, we could actually be fined up to $3,000 for violating that. So just as a policy, we never do it under any circumstances. So even though I know that it's your brother and you feel great about him, if you wouldn't mind doing me a favor and just give a quick call, get permission, and then we'll talk tomorrow. Is that fair enough? Yes, in the very back. Initially when I got started, I was a lot more regimented. But now, because I have a kind of weird schedule, I do a lot of calls in my car because I know this so well that I don't need a script any longer. I know when I call what the first 2, 3, 4 questions are, and then I know based upon whatever they tell me is their greatest area of interest or concern, I'm going to ask them 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions on debt, investments, insurance. I'll find out if they get a tax refund. I know how to schedule it. So I can do that while I'm driving. So I actually do a lot of that. But I will tell you one thing. There was one, this going back a few years ago, that I was a little frustrated. My schedule wasn't really filled. And I had a bunch of referrals, and I just wasn't getting around to calling them. And so I said to Maria, I said, "Hey, listen, don't expect this weekend for us to do anything. I'm working all weekend. I'm doing nothing but making calls." And Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, literally all I did was make calls. And that was probably, 2, 3 years ago, something like that. We've never had to do that ever again because we booked up so many that it just kind of created so much momentum after that. So it probably does make sense to say, "Hey, I've got these specific times that I make calls and whatnot." But if you're asking, what have I done, I haven't done that. I probably should. It would probably be better. Yes. The question is how do you recontact with clients that you haven't talked to for years? So if you're like me and you've been around for 23 plus years and you had somebody 22 years ago and you haven't called them, what do? Here's the answer that I would give you. I want you to imagine for a second you have 1,000 clients, and every 90 days you've talked to 999 of them every 90 days since they became your client. And suddenly you go to move your desk and you see the 1,000th client, their name on the floor, and you go, "Oh, crap, I've never called this person in 23 years, 22 years. This is terrible." What would you say when you call the person? You'd call up and you'd say, "I'm so sorry. I just realized that for some reason, you must have just slipped through the cracks, but we haven't talked. I've never followed up. I just feel horrible about it, but I promise you can certainly expect better in the future." And what would the client say? "Oh, that's okay. That's okay." That's because they would feel your sincerity. Now I want you to treat all 1,000 people that you haven't called the exact same way that you would treat that one. So you want to have the attitude of they're the only ones this has ever happened, because if you don't, what happens is they can smell your fear. You know, you go, hello? And you expect them to be like really angry. And that isn't the case. The fact is they're really appreciative of the fact that you called and you checked in with them, and there's no problem. Yes? Okay, what you're going to find is that you're literally going to wind up just having two types of appointments. You're going to have, which by the way is not dramatically different than what you had yesterday. You had your third-party referral system letter appointment where you walk through the door, and you had your trainee favor appointment where the client would say, I'm not really too sure why we're here. They just said they needed a favor and they needed to show me something, type of thing. So you still in your head would say, all right, am I here on a letter or am I here on... So you have to be able to, again, there's two different pieces to it. It's the same thing here. If you have your pre-called introductions, you walk through the door, you know everything's going to be waiting for you, and you start it off a certain way. If it's a favor appointment, somewhere during the favor appointment, you do what's called a transition. And the transition is just literally this simple. By the way, did I mention to you how we get compensated? That's it. You get it up front, you get it out, here's how we get compensated. Are you comfortable with that process? Great. Now it's ready. Yes? Okay, question is, when you're training somebody and you get pre-called introductions, who are they referring, you or the person that you're training? And the answer is you. The trainee can't make a call. They're not licensed. The trainee could quit, and then you don't have these referrals. So the fact is you control the referrals even though you're splitting the referrals with the trainee. Now, everybody has a different way to do this. The way that we've done this is, let's say that we have 10. We'll put them on index cards and literally just say to the trainee, we turn them upside down and say, pick 5. These are your 5. This way they can't say you played favorites or you got the better ones or whatever. Here, these are your 5. I'll still call all 10. Right? I was the one that was referred. I'll call all 10. But those 5 are the trainees. And by the way, just as you saw with Dave, when I gave those 20 pre-called introductions to Dave, I was the one referred, not Dave. So all Dave did when he called was just said, Dave, what? I'm calling from Howard Lashner's office. He asked me to give you a call. That's it. Or you could just say, you could say something like this. You could say, hi, this is Dave Durbin. Your friend Mary Jones had referred a business associate of mine, Howard Lashner, to you. She mentioned Howard's name to you, didn't she? Wonderful. Is now a good time to talk? That's it. Yes. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Yeah, I think that if you have a stack of old ones, so you haven't been effective, absolutely, you want to use the client's influence. And what you want to realize is when you say a stack, what's your definition of a stack? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. That's fabulous. So you're frustrated because you got 100, you've mailed out letters, you can't get return phone calls or anything like that. All right, if you call back to clients, you may be able to schedule 10 appointments. That's fabulous. 10 and you're done. You get 10 in this world, you are off to the races. So you don't have to think in terms of if I got to get every single one. You don't. You just need enough to get you started, get an oomph. And by the way, by calling back the clients, what you may find, which typically happens, is a client will tell you that they had a conversation about you to somebody else, and they forgot to mention it to you. So one of the nice things about talking to clients is it's typical that they'll say, it's funny you call. I was talking to somebody about 2 months ago, and I was thinking about you, but I never got around to calling you. Great, well, let's take care of that right now. Yes. Right. It's not very difficult at all. And again, I don't want to get into so much of the preaching of the presentation, but what I can tell you is in the F&A, there's 2 major leverage points on the second visit. First visit, obviously, it can be all of my clients come take a look at my business, blah, 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 whatever. But on the second visit, the leverage that you have is you've identified a shortfall, which most people have a financial shortfall. And then they give you the page in the back, which is the cash flow quadrant. So it gives you the ability to go through the cash flow quadrant with them and talk about, hey, Ron, as we went through your financial needs analysis, it's obvious that you have about an $1,100 a month shortfall. With an 11, I know it feels like a lot, but I want to explain to you a process or an option that may be available for you to be able to narrow that down and get that down to zero. If we had $400, we could pay for your kids' education. If we had $700, it would pay for your retirement. Your debt's in good shape because the way that we're going to handle that, you'd be in great shape. Isn't that true? Well, let me explain to you. There's 4 basic ways that people make money. You go through the cash flow quadrant, and then you can say, there's a lot of our clients that have decided to work with us on a part-time basis. We have a business system that shows people how to have great success. In fact, if you look at our track record of success, we have over 4,000 or 5,000, whatever that is now, people making over $50,000 a year. That's over $4,000 a month. In your situation, it's only $1,100. So it's not such a big deal to be able to close that shortfall for you. So it seems like it makes sense for us to at least explore the possibilities. Would you agree? Great, I'll have you come down to my office, take a look, blah, blah, blah. The worst that will happen is we'll take a look and find out that it's not an option for you. Fair enough? Another way, the second leverage point is, hey, you just gave me all these referrals. I'm going to see these people. Just like Dave said, why don't you come with me? Or why don't you get licensed or something like that? So there really is leverage, just like the way that I was able to get Jason into the business. All right, last one? Yeah, do you ever email confirmation letters? The company has told us, now I'm saying this from my point of view, I'm not your OSJ. But the company has told me that it is okay to email a confirmation. Yes, I do have this time available. You can't mention anything about their personal situation, anything like that. Beyond that, what I'll tell you is that you should talk to your OSJ and have them decide whether or not the format of the letter is proper and so forth and so on. Okay, but I don't feel comfortable answering that because that's more of a call that somebody else should make in your upline. Is that it? That's it. God bless all. Thank you.